Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. So before we really get into the weeds today, just a quick reminder. If you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple.
Highly recommend it, yeah.
Because today, we were getting into something really fascinating.
Right.
Imagine stepping off like a tiny twin prop plane onto this tarmac that is just baking in the equatorial sun.
Oh, the heat there is unreal.
Right, it's intense. And you've got your battered dive bag slung over your shoulder. You're staring at a spreadsheet on your phone where you've calculated this incredibly strict $45 a day budget, and you've got this head full of dreams about untouched, kaleidoscopic coral reefs.
The classic backpacker dream, really.
Exactly. But then you look to your right, and there is this couple boarding a massive air-conditioned tinted window transport van.
Oh, yeah, the resort transport.
Yeah, and they paid like $1,200 last night to sleep on the exact same island chain you are about to try and navigate on a rented, rusted scooter.
It's just such a wild contrast.
It is, and here is the kicker for both of you. Because of a localized monsoon system brewing off the coast of the Banda Sea, the only wooden public boat out of the harbor just broke down.
Which happens all the time, by the way.
All the time. So now you are both trapped. Your spreadsheet budget is now completely useless because you're stuck, and their luxury transport is going absolutely nowhere.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Seriously, welcome, because that scenario is just, it's the absolute reality of frontier geography.
It really is. You are looking at two entirely different economic universes that occupy the exact same physical space. And they're governed by the exact same unforgiving environmental forces.
And if you're listening, you probably already know Wakatobi's reputation for macro diving.
Yeah.
We aren't here today to tell you the coral is pretty.
No, I mean, if you are a diver, you already speak of these reefs in hushed, reverent tones.
Yeah.
The marine life is a given.
Right, it's legendary. But we are here to audit the brutal economics and the raw, completely unvarnished logistics of actually getting there and, surviving the itinerary.
Surviving is the key word there.
It really is. So our mission today is unpacking this highly detailed travel audit we got our hands on. It's titled the Wakatobi Audit, Diving Logistics and Travelworthiness 2026-27.
It is a dense document.
Very dense. And the core paradox of this document, the claim that completely subverts normal travel logic, is that a destination is not automatically worth visiting just because that diving is world-class.
Which forces a total recalibration of how we, assign value to a destination.
Yeah.
Because Wakatobi represents this massive split market.
A massive one.
Yeah. Economically, it is a destination of staggering extremes. So on one end of the spectrum, you have independent travelers surviving on $10 to $20 a night in localized homestays, eating at street carts.
Like literal plastic stools on the side of the road.
Exactly. But then on the exact same island chain, you have luxury clientele easily spending over $1,000 a night at an exclusive resort.
It's mind-blowing.
And the terrifying part for the average traveler, the person trying to plan a standard 2-week vacation, is that the middle ground is missing.
The comfortable middle.
Right. The reliable mid-tier resort with predictable logistics. It is almost non-existent without taking on significant itinerary friction.
So if you are looking for untouched reefs, or honestly, if you are just fascinated by the sheer psychology of remote frontier travel, this deep dive is going to give you the exact due diligence you need before booking a flight.
You really need to hear this before you put your credit card down.
Definitely. But before we even touch the financial spreadsheets, we have to look at the map. You cannot understand the budget until you understand the physical layout of the islands.
Geography is everything here.
It is the root cause of every single piece of friction you will experience.
Yeah, the geography absolutely dictates the economics.
Yeah.
Wakatobi is not, it's not a single, easily navigable landmass like Bali or Phuket.
Right, you can't just rent a car and drive around the whole thing.
Not at all. It is a remote archipelago. It's a regency and a national park spread across a vast expanse of ocean. And the name itself is actually a portmanteau.
I found this so interesting in the audit.
Yeah, it's an acronym constructed from the first 2 letters of its 4 main islands. So you have Wangi-Wangi, Kaledupa, Tomia, and Bananko.
Wakatobi.
Exact.
It is a brilliant piece of branding, honestly, but I feel like it is incredibly deceptive for the consumer.
Oh, 100%.
Because it makes the destinations sound like a cohesive, tightly knit unit. Like it implies you can just hop in a taxi and drive from the Wa Island to the Bai Island in an afternoon.
Which is physically impossible. You need a very fast boat and a lot of luck. Let's actually break down the realities of these four main islands, because where you decide to go basically determines your entire risk profile.
Let's start with the Wa.
Right. Wangi-Wangi. You have to start here because this is the primary arrival hub. It is the bottleneck through which the vast majority of public independent travel funnels.
Usually from mainland transit points, right? Like Kendari or Makassar.
Yeah, and you're getting there either by a long, honestly exhausting sea crossing or by domestic flight. So Wangi-Wangi houses Wanchi Town, the main administrative center, the central markets, and all those foundational transit hotels.
But even the act of arriving on Wangi-Wangi immediately strips away any illusion of, like, consumer convenience.
It really sets the tone.
It does, because I was looking at the topographical data in the audit regarding the Wakatobi airport. It is located on the exact opposite side of the island from the main city of Wanchi.
Yeah, it's nowhere near the infrastructure.
Right. And we aren't talking about a major international terminal with a line of metered Bluebird taxis waiting outside.
No, the placement of the airport is a classic frontier compromise. They just had to build a runway where the topography allowed for a flat enough strip.
Which just happened to be miles away from the Deepwater Harbor and the population center.
Exactly. So when you land there as an independent traveler, if you haven't pre-negotiated a pickup with a specific homestay, you are stepping out into an infrastructural void.
Just a total void.
You are entirely reliant on finding an local motorcycle taxi or, convincing someone to call a private car for you.
And then you are strapped to the back of a motorbike with your heavy dive gear, riding half an hour across the island just to reach the town where the boats might leave from.
Might being the operative word.
Right. You have landed, but you are not actually there yet. The friction literally starts at the baggage carousel.
It does. And so that is Wangi-Wangi. That's the front door. Now, if you manage to navigate that, you look south down the island chain to Kaledupa and its tiny satellite island, Hoga.
Hoga gets mentioned a lot in dive blogs.
It does, yeah. The audit identifies this specific cluster as the epicenter for lower-cost diving and snorkeling.
Okay.
It's characterized by mangrove systems, traditional villages, and just a handful of budget dive lodges. It really attracts the backpacker demographic and a lot of marine biology students.
Right, people who are okay with very basic setups. And then you have to cross another massive stretch of open ocean to get to Tomia.
Yeah, and Tomia is where the commitment level spikes significantly. The geology shifts, the reefs become these dramatic drop-offs, and the whole island is geared toward a much stronger, almost obsessive focus on marine life.
So this isn't for casual snorkelers?
No, it is the domain of the highly committed diver. If you are enduring the boats to Tomia, you are not there to read a paperback on the beach. I mean, you are there to spend 4 hours a day underwater.
Which leaves the "by" in the acronym, Binongo.
Binongo is the absolute outlier. Historically, it's known as the Island of Blacksmith.
Which is super cool, but practically speaking for tourism.
Practically speaking, it has almost zero dedicated tourism infrastructure. The audit explicitly states that Binongo is strictly for travelers with an abundance of time.
Like months, not days.
Exactly. If you are attempting to slot Binongo into a standard 14-day corporate vacation, you are just engineering your own logistical disaster.
So, spanning across this massive disconnected geography is that split market reality we touched on earlier. And I really want to drop some specific data points here because the contrast is so severe, it almost feels like a typo in the financial model.
Oh, the numbers are wild.
They really are. So on the public travel side, you have independent backpackers utilizing local homestays. And those cost between $10 and $20 a night.
Very, very cheap.
Super cheap. They are renting local scooters, eating at street carts, taking public cargo ferries.
It's an incredibly low overhead existence. Well, provided nothing goes wrong.
Exactly. That's the catch. But then, operating in the exact same ocean, literally looking at the same water, you have the Wakatobi Dive Resort. And the audit provides their 2026 pricing.
Brace yourself for this.
Yeah. Their entry-level accommodation, the Palm Bungalows, starts at $415 per person per night.
Per person.
Per person. And during their holiday season, that jumps to $475.
And again, that per-person multiplier is so crucial to understand. A couple is looking at nearly $1,000 a night for the absolute baseline room.
Just to sleep there.
Just to sleep. That is before anyone has rented a BCD or looked at a dive boat.
Exactly. And the ceiling is just stratospheric. Their larger villas range from $815 up to $1,270 per person per night for a 2-bedroom pool villa.
Unbelievable.
And this clientele, they aren't taking that 30-minute Ojek ride across Wangi-Wangi that we were talking about.
Oh, definitely not.
They bypass the public infrastructure entirely. The resort operates a private two-way guest flight directly from Bali, landing on a private airstrip on a neighboring island.
A private airstrip on a tiny island.
Yeah. And the cost for that 2.5-hour flight, $890 per person.
It's wild, but that private airstrip is honestly a fascinating piece of logistical engineering. I mean, it is the ultimate manifestation of paying to fly over the friction.
Literally flying over the problems.
Yes. The resort recognized decades ago that relying on the rolling schedules of public wooden ferries would completely destroy their luxury value proposition.
Right.
Because you cannot sell a $1,000 a night room to a Wall Street executive if you have to tell them, they might be stuck in Kendari for 3 days because a boat captain decided not to sail.
You just can't. And the audit also provides a very clear, almost aggressive decision signal regarding the trajectory of these resort prices. There is a real urgency for anyone looking at 2027.
Because the prices are moving.
Fast. Prices in the premium tier are not just holding steady against inflation, they are actively surging. The 2027 Palm Bungalows jump from a $465 standard rate to $545 in the holiday season.
So the gap between the $10 public homestay and the luxury resort is widening into a chasm.
A massive chasm.
Yeah. Premium travelers who want that frictionless, curated version of Wakatobi should absolutely not assume that waiting for next season will save them money. The resort is positioning itself as a Veblen good.
A Veblen good.
Yeah, it's an economics term, a luxury item, where demand increases as the price goes up, because the price itself is the barrier to entry guaranteeing exclusivity.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense. I was actually trying to conceptualize this whole dynamic for the independent traveler, the ones looking at those $10 rooms. And it's exactly like buying a cheap, vintage European sports car.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Right, because you see the sticker price, the $10 room, the $3 plates of noodles, and you think, wow, the market is mispriced. I am going to execute this brilliant, incredibly cheap tropical vacation. But what you aren't calculating is the maintenance.
The hidden depreciation of your most valuable asset, which is your time.
Yes. The itinerary drag. The maintenance on that cheap vacation is the weather buffers you are forced to build in. It is the positioning nights you have to pay for in transit hubs like Makassar just to guarantee you catch your next flight.
Or the days lost sitting on a dock.
Exactly, waiting for a ferry that isn't coming. The sticker price of public Wakatobi is practically free, but the logistical maintenance will absolutely bankrupt your vacation time.
That vintage car analogy perfectly encapsulates what the audit calls the skip-if rule.
Yes, let's talk about that.
This is the primary structural warning in the entire document. It dictates that you must skip Wakatobi entirely if your Indonesia itinerary allows for fewer than 8 usable nights on the islands, or, frankly, if you aren't a highly dedicated diver or snorkeler.
And I want to clarify that 8 usable nights part, because that means 8 days where your feet are on the sand and your mask is in the water, not 8 days including your flights from London or New York.
Correct. When you model a trip to Wakatobi on a spreadsheet, the daily burn rate looks incredibly low. But once you add the internal flights from Jakarta or Bali, the high uncertainty of the inter-island ferries, the days dedicated purely to transit, and those mandatory buffer nights we just discussed.
The tax is huge.
The true tax on your trip is time. Remoteness does not mean better when the infrastructure fails. If you only have a 5-day window, a single delayed domestic flight or a suddenly canceled boat doesn't just inconvenience you.
No, it ruins it.
It completely zeroes out your entire trip. You spend your whole vacation in transit.
It is a high-stakes bet against weather and mechanics, which brings us directly into the meteorological reality. Because moving from geography to timing, now that we understand the extreme isolation of these islands, we have to look at the sky.
The weather is the ultimate boss here.
It really is. If you pick the wrong week to visit Wakatobi, you are going to actively destroy those 8 precious days.
Timing in a frontier environment requires a completely different mindset. Like urban travel logic dictates that you can visit Rome or Tokyo in any month, right? If it rains, you just take a taxi to a museum.
You just go indoors.
Right. But frontier travel logic dictates that if you visit Wakatobi during the wrong monsoon phase, you might literally be trapped on Kaledupa because the wave heights in the Banda Sea exceed the safety tolerances of the wooden outrigger boats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the weather doesn't just change your daily activity. It shuts down the entire supply chain.
So let's break down the booking calendar the audit provides because it is hyper-specific. The broad, generally acceptable window to visit is from April through November.
Broadly speaking, yes.
But within that, and certainly outside of it, there are severe danger zones that will ruin an independent itinerary.
Yeah. The most critical danger zones, particularly for travelers on a rigid schedule, are January, February, and bleeding into March.
Okay, so early year is bad.
Very bad. The audit is absolute on this point. These are the wrong months if you need any level of transportation certainty. This period aligns with the northwest monsoon, which brings high risks of prolonged rain, but more importantly, significant sea disruption.
Right.
If you need a ferry schedule to line up neatly so you can catch a domestic flight to Bali, attempting that in February is logistical suicide.
And then there's December. Applying standard Western logic, you would think December, the global holiday season, would be a prime time to go.
You'd assume so.
But the audit explicitly flags December as poor value, because you are walking into a trap where you combine the increasing risk of the wet season with end-of-year global holiday pricing. You are paying a premium to sit under a tin roof listening to the rain, wondering if the boat will sail.
Which is exactly why the smart money looks at the shoulder months. The source identifies May, June, and September as the sweet spots.
The sweet spots, okay.
Yeah, these months offer the highest value-to-performance ratio. You have largely cleared the instability of the rainy season, but you haven't yet collided with the peak demand crush of the European summer holidays in July and August.
That makes sense.
And April is also noted as a strong transitional month. It's excellent for divers who want the improving water visibility, but want to avoid the high season scarcity of resources.
And that high season, July, August, and October, offers exceptional diving conditions, but it comes with intense European summer demand. But here is the mechanism that absolutely fascinated me, and it is a massive trap for the premium traveler.
Oh, the resort calendar.
Yes. The Wakatobi Dive Resort operates on a completely different seasonal calendar than the rest of the planet.
Yeah, it's the holiday season trap. The pricing breakdown of the resort reveals that they define their peak holiday season incredibly broadly.
Very broadly.
For example, in 2026, their published holiday season, which triggers those $50 to $70 per night price hikes, runs from September 14th all the way to November 16th.
Wait, mid-September to mid-November. In almost any other global travel market, that is the definition of shoulder season. That is when prices are supposed to drop.
Right, but you have to look at the demographic the resort is capturing. They are targeting affluent professionals and retirees who specifically travel outside of traditional school holidays. Furthermore, September through November often provides some of the calmest sea conditions and best visibility in the region. The resort knows this is prime diving time, so they monetize it as peak season.
That is brilliant but brutal.
It creates a bizarre parallel reality. Like a premium traveler staying at the resort is paying peak holiday season rates during the exact same weeks that an independent traveler staying in a homestay on Wangi-Wangi considers a cheaper, quieter shoulder season.
They exist in the same ocean, but in entirely different economies. It's wild. Now, speaking of seasons and demand, we need to completely dismantle the concept of crowds in a place like this.
Yes, please.
Because the audit points out a fundamental misunderstanding travelers have when they seek out remote destinations. Wakatobi does not have a Bali crowd problem.
No, it has a scarcity problem. And travelers, particularly those used to highly developed tourist hubs, constantly conflate the two.
Exactly. You book a trip thinking, I am so exhausted by the traffic in Seminyak, I just want a quiet beach with nobody around.
But the absence of crowds directly equates to the absence of infrastructure.
Yep.
If a public inter-island boat running between Tomia and Kaledupa is canceled due to engine failure, the problem you face is not that there is a long line of tourists fighting you for a seat on the next boat.
Right.
The problem is that the next boat doesn't exist. There is literally no alternative transport that day. The scarcity of the crowd guarantees a scarcity of solutions.
I really want you, the listener, to think about that for a second. How many times have you booked a quiet destination, romanticizing the idea of being alone on a pristine beach, only to realize that quiet also means there are no taxis at the airport?
No restaurants open past 8 o'clock.
Exactly, and absolutely no backup plan when your itinerary falls apart.
It is the double-edged sword to the untouched frontier.
Yeah.
And this reality of scarcity dictates entirely different booking strategies depending on which tier of the market you occupy.
So how do you book it?
Well, for the premium travelers booking the Wakatobi Dive Resort, the strategy is aggressive foresight. They must book as far ahead as their annual leave and flight schedules allow. Because of the resort's specific holiday windows and the absolute scarcity of those high-end villas, inventory vanishes. And as we established, prices only march upward.
But for the independent traveler, the audit demands the exact opposite approach. You must book conservatively. The source specifically warns against constructing a rigid, prepaid, non-refundable itinerary that attempts to hop from island to island every 48 hours.
The classic spreadsheet itinerary.
Right. We'll do Wangi-Wangi for one night, catch the early boat to Kaledupa for 2 nights, charter a boat to Tomia for 3 nights, and then fly out.
The audit tears that approach apart.
It really does. It looks efficient on a screen in a coffee shop in London, but it is incredibly fragile in the real world. A single gust of wind knocks down the entire domino chain.
Yeah. Independent travelers are advised to book their first few nights on Wangi-Wangi to establish a beachhead. Just get there and settle, and then leave their schedule flexible. And most importantly, they must leave a buffer day before any international flight.
A buffer day. A mandatory 24-hour period where you plan to do absolutely nothing but sit in a hotel room in transit, solely to absorb the friction of the previous day's travel failures.
Because if you don't respect the friction, you fall into the trap.
Yes, the traps.
Yeah.
The audit outlines 3 specific named logistical traps that derail trips over and over again.
These 3 traps are like the core diagnostic of the audit. They map exactly to the cognitive errors travelers make when transitioning from urban to frontier environments.
Okay, let's examine trap number 1, the last boat to your flight trap.
The mechanism behind this trap is the nature of the inter-island boats. They do not operate on airline-grade precision.
No, they don't.
They are rolling, highly weather-dependent schedules designed primarily for the movement of local goods and residents, not for tourists trying to make tight airline connections.
So how does the physics of the trap play out for a traveler?
Imagine a diver who has spent a phenomenal week on Tomia. Their domestic flight out of the Wakatobi airport on Wangi-Wangi, which connects them to Makassar, and then to their international flight home leaves on a Tuesday afternoon.
Okay.
Applying standard urban logic, they plan to take the public Tuesday morning boat from Tomia, arrive at Wangi-Wangi harbor, take an ojek to the airport, and fly out.
Because in New York, taking a morning train to an afternoon flight is completely standard.
But in the Wakatobi Regency, that Tuesday morning boat gets canceled because the wind shifted overnight, or the captain couldn't source a critical engine part, or, quite commonly, the boat left 2 hours early because the cargo hold was full and the captain saw no reason to wait.
Oh, that would be so stressful.
Suddenly, that traveler loses a full day. Because they missed the boat, they missed the afternoon domestic flight. Because they missed the domestic flight, their entire international ticketing sequence is automatically canceled by the airline as a no-show. Yeah, a missed $20 boat ticket just cascaded into thousands of dollars of rebooking fees and forced hotel stays.
And the fix is so simple, yet people fight it because it feels like a waste of vacation time.
They hate giving up a dive day.
Exactly. But you must always sleep on Wangi-Wangi the night before a departure flight. You have to willingly sacrifice your final day of pristine diving on Tomia, pack your gear, and go sit in the relatively unremarkable transit town of Wangi, solely to guarantee you are on the same landmass as your airplane.
It is the premium you pay for logistical safety. The audit notes that the travelers who suffer most from this trap are those with fixed return dates for employment and short break divers.
Yeah.
If a single missed boat would cause catastrophic financial or professional damage to your life, the audit bluntly states, do not attempt the multi-island public route.
Just skip it. Okay, let's look at trap number 2, the resort sticker shock trap. We discussed the pricing earlier, but the mechanism here is psychological.
It's pure search engine optimization confusion.
Yes. It is the collision of the split market occurring inside a single Google search. A couple hears about Wakatobi and searches for it online. The search algorithm feeds them 2 conflicting streams of information.
Right.
On one hand, they read blog posts from backpackers who visited in 2018 talking about surviving on $70 a day. On the other hand, they are looking at the glossy, world-famous underwater imagery produced by the Wakatobi Dive Resort.
And the cognitive dissonance just sets in. They want the $70 price tag, but their expectations are entirely anchored to the $1,000 experience.
And when they finally try to book the luxury version, the seamless transfers, the beautiful air-conditioned bungalows, the premium dive boats with hot towels, the lived reality hits them like a freight train.
It's a huge shock.
A couple planning a luxury trip can easily spend $10,000 to $12,000 before they even factor in their international flights from Europe or America.
Easily.
You have the $890 private flights. You have the 7-night unlimited dive packages, which the audit lists at $1,500 per person.
So they budget $3,000 based on an outdated backpacker blog and discover the actual cost of frictionless luxury is quadruple that.
At least.
The fix here is holistic budgeting. You have to price the entire sequence, the private flights, the dive packages, the mandatory resort meal plans, not just the nightly room rate. If you would resent paying luxury rates simply to achieve isolation and reliable logistics, you must skip the resort tier.
Which brings us to the most visceral danger.
Yeah.
Trap number 3, the medical distance reality trap.
This is the one that demands real respect.
It does. The mechanism is simple geography. Remote coral atolls lack deep bench medical infrastructure. There is no trauma center hiding behind the palm trees.
The lived reality is that a remote island feels incredibly peaceful right up until the exact microsecond biology betrays you.
Yeah.
And we aren't just talking about catastrophic dive accidents like decompression sickness, though, by the way, that requires a low-altitude medevac flight to a decompression chamber in Bali or Makassar, costing tens of thousands of dollars.
Which is terrifying.
But we are talking about minor, everyday occurrences, like a simple scrape against a piece of coral, which is laden with bacteria and nematocysts, that blossoms into a severe staph infection within 48 hours due to the tropical humidity.
Or an ear infection developed after 4 straight days of diving.
Exactly. Or a child suddenly spiking a 103-degree fever on Hoga at 2 in the morning.
In a major city, that is a minor inconvenience. You drive to a 24-hour urgent care, get a prescription, and you're home in an hour.
But in Wakatobi, that exact same scenario immediately triggers a severe logistical crisis. You are suddenly attempting to negotiate an emergency private boat charter in total darkness, hoping the captain is willing to navigate the reefs at night to get you back to Wangi-Wangi.
Just hoping.
Yeah, and you are hoping the local clinic has the specific broad-spectrum antibiotics you need. And if they don't, you are frantically trying to secure a seat on the next domestic flight to mainland Sulawesi.
So the audit's required fix for this trap is absolute and non-negotiable. First, you must possess robust travel insurance that specifically underwrites remote diving and medical evacuation.
Mandatory.
Second, you cannot rely on local pharmacies. You must carry your own comprehensive medical kit tailored to tropical environments, antibiotics, high-grade wound care, eardrops.
Bring it all with you.
Yes. Third, if you feel even slightly unwell, you must retreat to Wangi-Wangi immediately to maintain proximity to the airport.
The source also extends this safety warning to snorkelers, which I found really important.
Oh, right, the snorkeling warning.
There's a deadly assumption that if you are just snorkeling, you are safe. But the audit specifically flags the presence of strong, unpredictable currents sweeping across the reef drop-offs. It strongly advises hiring local boat drivers to shadow you in the water. You cannot just wait off a remote beach assuming it is a swimming pool.
So if we synthesize these 3 traps, the fragile boats, the extreme budgets, and the terrifying medical distance, they all stem from one massive underlying cognitive error.
It's exactly.
The error of applying urban travel logic to a dynamic frontier environment. Assuming that transport schedules are fixed and legally binding.
Right.
Assuming that prices reflect the local cost of living rather than the immense cost of importing luxury to the edge of the mat. And assuming that an invisible emergency safety net exists just out of sight.
It doesn't.
In a frontier environment, the infrastructure will not catch you. You are your own safety net.
That is a deeply sobering realization. You are the safety net.
Right.
So with those structural traps clearly mapped out, let's talk about the day-to-day financial burn rate.
Let's get into the numbers.
Yeah. What exactly does a Tuesday afternoon in Wakatobi cost, and what level of comfort does that money actually buy you? Because the audit breaks this down into highly specific, granular budget tiers.
It does, and this is where we transition from theory to hard planning. Let's start at the absolute baseline, the backpacker tier. The audit estimates this at $45 to $75 per person per day. Okay, I have to pause you right there because I am looking at these numbers and my math is struggling. What does $45 actually procure in this environment?
Well, at that tier, you are staying in foundational local accommodations. Places like Jelly Homestay in Wanchi, Sutiani Homestay in Waha, or a Reef Homestay on Kaledupa.
Okay.
These rooms run between $10 and $35 a night. You are surviving on simple warung food, local street stalls, and night markets. You're using transportation very sparingly, perhaps renting a scooter for a few hours.
And diving.
You are absolutely not boat diving every day on this budget. Your aquatic life is restricted to snorkeling off public beaches or occasionally sharing the cost of a small local boat with other backpackers.
Here's my problem with that baseline. If your room is $25 and your food is $15, you are at $40. That leaves you a $5 margin.
Right, it's razor thin.
If you are operating on a rigid $45 a day budget, you have zero financial shock absorbers. If a public ferry gets canceled and you are forced to chip in for a private charter, or if you get stranded and have to book an unexpected night in a slightly more expensive hotel on Wangi-Wangi, your budget is instantly annihilated.
Your assessment is entirely correct. And the audit acknowledges this high wire act. Operating at the $45 baseline requires everything to go perfectly, which, as we've established, is statistically improbable.
Totally.
That is why the next tier up is where the source suggests most independent travelers should actually aim. The comfortable independent tier, the mid-range.
The mid-range is estimated at $95 to $180 per day per person. This feels much more resilient.
It is the sweet spot for adventurous couples or dedicated divers who aren't wealthy but value their sanity. In this tier, your accommodation allocation rises to between $35 and $75 a night.
So you get an upgrade.
Yeah, you upgrade from bare-bones homestays to properties like Patuno Resort, Hotel Wasada Beach, or Naya Matahora Island Resort. You have a food and beverage allowance of $15 to $30 a day, which allows for better restaurants and the occasional local beer.
Nice.
You can afford a dedicated daily scooter rental, and most importantly, you can absorb actual dive-related costs, which run $25 to $80 a day. Plus, you inherently carry a daily buffer of unallocated cash.
I want to focus on that buffer. When I was analyzing the independent tiers, I kept visualizing this buffer cash, that extra $50 to $100 a day you keep in reserve, as the atmospheric re-entry shield on a spacecraft.
Oh, the heat shield metaphor works perfectly for frontier logistics.
Think about the physics of it.
Yeah.
If you arrive in the Wakatobi archipelago with less than $100 a day baseline budget, you have entered the atmosphere with no heat shield.
And you're going to burn up.
Yes. The sheer friction of island logistics, the canceled boats, the sudden extortionate cost of a private transfer in the rain, the extra night required because a domestic flight was delayed. That friction is going to burn up your trip. You will be stressed, you will run out of cash, and you will ultimately resent the destination. You need that buffer cash to absorb the localized heat of frontier travel.
And that heat shield becomes exponentially more expensive when you add dependents.
Oh, the family tier.
Yes, let's look at it. The audit provides an estimate of $260 to $520 per day for a family of 4. But there is a very stark warning attached to this demographic. Cheap rooms for families are a dangerous false economy.
I can easily see a family looking at those $15 homestays and thinking, this is brilliant. We can do a massive family adventure on a shoestring.
The audit aggressively dismantles that fantasy. A $15 room means low-pressure, cold water showers, highly inconsistent electricity, limited food options that might not appeal to children, and zero structural support if someone gets sick.
It sounds miserable with kids.
For a family, the buffer required isn't just financial, it is infrastructural. Families must prioritize large arrival night buffers on Wangi-Wangi and book larger properties like the Patuno Resort, where they have access to pools, reliable air conditioning, and staff who can assist in a crisis.
So the base camp has to be solid.
They need to allocate $90 to $180 a night just for accommodation to establish that secure base camp.
Because a tropical rainstorm in a tiny, bare-bones concrete room with 2 bored kids and a canceled ferry itinerary is not a family vacation. It is a hostage situation.
Literally a hostage situation.
You are paying for the space to safely absorb the dead time.
Precisely. Now contrast all of this survival math with the other end of the spectrum, the luxury tier. The audit places this at $900 to $1,600 per person per day.
The gap is almost comical. It is a completely different economic universe.
This tier is exclusively for guests at the Wakatobi Dive Resort, or those chartering the Pelagian luxury dive yacht, where cabins range from $440 to $960 a night.
Wow.
Your entire daily budget is consumed by premium room rates, private aviation, and unlimited, highly supported dive packages. The friction we just spent 20 minutes discussing, you have effectively paid to make it vanish.
Paid for it to disappear. Finally, the audit addresses a modern demographic, the digital nomad tier. It estimates $1,300 to $1,900 for a month-long stay. But the verdict rendered here is incredibly weak.
It is essentially a do not recommend.
Yeah.
The audit explicitly warns remote workers not to rely on Wakatobi. The fundamental requirements of a digital nomad, uninterrupted high-speed internet, dense social networking, co-working spaces, and stable power grids simply do not exist at scale.
You can't just set up a laptop on the beach.
No. While mobile data exists, relying on it for crucial video conferences across an unstable grid is a massive professional risk. It is a phenomenal location for an offline, disconnected reset, but it is a terrible choice if you have hard corporate deadlines.
So, keeping that heat shield of buffer cache in mind, I have a challenge for you, the listener. You need to be deeply, perhaps uncomfortably honest with yourself right now. What is your actual internal tolerance for discomfort versus your desire to save money?
Because the Wakatobi Regency will aggressively test whatever answer you give.
It will stress test your patience daily. And that leads us to the ground reality. Let's say you have budgeted perfectly, you have accepted the split market, you have your financial heat shield intact, and you have bypassed the 3 traps. What does a random Tuesday afternoon actually look, feel, and taste like when you are walking around these islands?
Let's start with the supply chain of food, because the audit paints a very specific picture. The cardinal rule is do not expect a curated restaurant scene.
If you are looking for a strip of trendy cafes serving imported avocado toast, smoothie bowls, and artisanal lattes, you are on the wrong island.
Entirely the wrong island. The supply chain cannot support highly perishable, imported, trendy foods.
So what do you eat?
The audit lists the key anchors for independent dining, and they are intensely local. You have the Pasar Malam Seafood Market in Wangi, which is essentially night market dining, where you pick fresh fish to be grilled over coconut husks.
Which sounds amazing.
It's incredible. You have established local spots like Dapper Maritim or the street food stalls scattered along Lakota Beach.
And the economics of this local food are incredibly favorable. A simple local meal of nasi goreng or grilled fish runs $2 to $3.
That's it.
A slightly better sit-down meal at a local hotel might cost $5 to $10. A local bintang beer in the places where it is available is $3 to $4. But the trade-off for those incredibly low prices is that you must navigate the local etiquette and respect the cultural baseline.
The etiquette is vital. This is not a purpose-built, sanitized tourist enclave like Nusa Dua in Bali.
No.
This is a living, working, deeply traditional Indonesian regency. The audit explicitly advises travelers to dress more modestly in the towns and villages than they would lounging at a private resort.
Like covering your shoulders and knees.
Yes. Furthermore, it reminds travelers of basic human respect. Always ask permission before photographing residents.
There is a very strong point made regarding the Bajo communities, the sea nomads who have lived on the water in this region for centuries. The audit stresses that you must not treat their villages as tourist attractions or a human zoo.
You are a guest in their living room.
It is about reducing your footprint and engaging with respect. And regarding the etiquette of money, the audit clarifies that tipping is not structurally expected or required in the way it is in North America.
Right. You do not need to calculate a 20% gratuity on a $2 plate of noodles.
However, rounding up the bill is standard practice, and you should reserve substantial tips for the individuals who actively solve problems for you. The dive guides, the porters carrying your heavy gear, or the boat captains who navigate the weather.
You tip the people who fix the friction.
Exactly. Now let's pivot to safety. When travelers hear the words remote and frontier, their minds immediately jump to dangerous in terms of violent crime.
Sure, they think about getting mugged.
But the audit shifts that risk hierarchy entirely.
Violent crime against tourists is statistically negligible here. The safety profile in Wakatobi is entirely environmental and logistical.
Okay, break that down.
Safety is about water currents, transport timing, and, as we covered extensively, medical distance. The audit reiterates that independent snorkeling is not inherently safe just because the water is clear and the coral is shallow.
Right, the currents sweeping across those drop-offs do not care how good of a swimmer you are in a pool.
Which is why hiring a local boat driver to shadow you is an essential safety expense, not a luxury. Beyond the water, the safety concerns are highly practical.
Like what?
It means always wearing a helmet on a rented scooter. It means avoiding long rides between isolated villages at night because the roads are unlit and livestock often wander onto the tarmac.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, and it means possessing the situational awareness to refuse to board an inter-island boat that looks severely overloaded, even if it means missing a day of your itinerary.
Just walk away. There is also a fascinating administrative safety note regarding visas. The UK government travel advice, cited within the audit, details a 500,000 Indonesian rupiah visa on arrival fee, which converts to roughly 30 to 35 US dollars.
Yeah, pretty standard fee.
But it explicitly warns travelers to be highly vigilant about visa scams and fake websites. Overstaying a visa or arriving with the wrong documentation in a remote regency where immigration officials have total authority can lead to massive daily fines or immediate detention.
You don't want to mess with that.
You must use the official government portals.
The audit also addresses solo travel, particularly solo female travel. The verdict is that it is viable, provided the traveler is highly experienced in Southeast Asian transit.
So not a first-time solo trip?
No, definitely not. The primary challenge highlighted isn't physical harassment. It is severe isolation. There are fewer tourists to form groups with, fewer late-night transport options, and significantly less English spoken outside of the dive centers.
But if you successfully navigate all of this, the unpredictable boats, the modest dress codes, the scooter safety, the potential isolation, the sweeping currents, what is the actual payoff? Why do people endure this gauntlet of friction?
The payoff is entirely, unequivocally underwater.
It's all about the reef.
It is. The audit lists the prime locations.
Wow.
The dramatic walls of Tomia, the macro life around Hoga, Sambu Pier, Waha, Handu Beach. This is the singular reason to endure the journey.
And the audit provides a brilliant breakdown of what actually works on the ground versus what is highly overrated by Instagram.
I love this part.
The expert analysis states that what works are the quiet, early morning harbor walks. It is eating freshly caught seafood at Pasar Malam. It is committing to slow scooter days and maintaining a low-pressure reef schedule where you aren't desperately trying to move your luggage to a new island every 48 hours.
And what is overrated? The expectation of a casual, cocktail-in-hand resort beach holiday. The beaches might look stunning in highly edited photographs, but Wakatobi's true value lies beneath the surface and in its incredibly slow cultural pace.
The photos are lying to you.
While the photographs hide the reality of the dead time.
The dead time. That is the true tax of frontier travel.
The glossy photos don't show you sweating on a wooden bench for 3 hours waiting for a delayed boat.
No,
They don't show you retreating to a homestay because a sudden rain squall canceled your afternoon dive. They don't capture the frustration of walking a mile to the one restaurant you wanted to try, only to discover it requires 24 hours prior notice to open. You have to be psychologically prepared to embrace the dead time.
It is the reality of the re-entry friction we discussed. So before we render the final definitive verdicts from the source document, we have to ask the ultimate comparative question.
Right, the alternatives.
If Wakatobi sounds too logistically demanding, too risky for an independent budget, or too astronomically expensive in the luxury tier, where else in Indonesia should you go? The audit provides two massive comparative alternatives, and they perfectly frame Wakatobi's place in the market.
They do. Comparing these alternatives is the best way to clarify exactly what Wakatobi is and what it isn't. Yeah. The first major alternative presented is Bunaken, located in North Sulawesi.
Okay, map that out for me. Why would I choose to route my trip to Bunaken instead of Wakatobi?
You choose Bunaken if you demand world-class wall diving, but require significantly easier access and lower itinerary drag. The logistics are night and day. You fly into the major international airport in Manado, and within an hour, you are on a boat to the island.
That's so much easier.
Right. The dive infrastructure is highly established and highly competitive. You do not lose precious vacation days relying on unpredictable wooden ferries. Because the access is simpler and the supply chains are shorter, it is generally much cheaper to execute a mid-range trip.
But what is the trade-off for that convenience? Because there's always a trade-off.
The trade-off is atmosphere and exclusivity. Bunaken lacks the ultra-remote, sprawling archipelago feel of Wakatobi. Because it is so accessible from Manado, it can feel crowded with day trippers and mass tourism.
Oh, okay, so it's busy.
Yet, you are sharing the reefs with a much higher density of divers. If you are seeking deep frontier isolation, Bunaken will feel too developed. But if your time is strictly limited to a one-week vacation, Bunaken is the logistically sound choice.
And then there is the second alternative, The absolute heavyweight, Raja Ampat in West Papua.
Raja Ampat is for the traveler who wants the absolute pinnacle of global marine biodiversity. If you want the ultimate underwater payoff, Raja Ampat is arguably the peak of the mountain.
But what is the barrier to entry there?
The barrier is massive financial and logistical investment. To truly experience the Dampier Strait and the sprawling geography of Raja Ampat, you almost universally require a live-aboard dive yacht.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're looking at thousands of dollars just for the boat, plus complex flight logistics into Sorong, plus expensive marine park permits. It is significantly more expensive than the local budget version of Wakatobi. Raja Ampat is terrible for casual budgets, short timelines, or travelers who prefer to sleep on land.
So Wakatobi sits in this fascinating, highly specific middle ground. It is quieter, more culturally immersive, and cheaper on the ground than Raja Ampat, but it is much harder to reach and far more remote than Bunaken.
Which brings us to the grand finale of the audit.
The verdict matrix. The ultimate so what of this entire analysis. The source assigns a hard score out of 10 for each demographic tier. Let's rapidly break down these final scores, starting with the backpacker.
The audit assigns the backpacker tier a 6 out of 10.
Barely a passing grade.
The verdict is highly conditional. It is only worth it if you possess an itinerary of at least 10 days, are perfectly content sleeping in basic unair-conditioned rooms, and possess the psychological resilience to treat delayed, unpredictable public boats as part of the cultural adventure rather than a catastrophic failure.
Right. If you have a rigid corporate flight schedule or absolutely cannot stretch beyond $45 a day when things go wrong, skip it entirely. Next, the mid-range traveler.
The mid-range tier scores a 7 out of 10. The audit identifies this as the absolute sweet spot for independent travel in Wakatobi. It is highly recommended for adventurous couples or dedicated dive buddies who are there primarily for the reef, who have the budget to afford that re-entry heat shield, and who have the temperamental ability to laugh over a beer when a boat doesn't show up.
If you require seamless Bali-style ride-hailing apps and spontaneous beach club nightlife, you will be miserable. Now, the family tier, the verdict here, is honestly brutal.
It scores a 5 out of 10.
Ouch.
The audit explicitly states that independent Wakatobi is only worth it for families with older, highly water-confident teenagers and parents who are deeply experienced in remote Southeast Asian travel.
So, not for the faint of heart.
Right. It is a terrible choice for families with toddlers, highly picky eaters, or anyone with medical anxiety. The required baseline infrastructure simply isn't there to support a casual family holiday unless you are paying for the luxury resort tier to act as your safety net.
Speaking of which, let's look at the luxury tier.
This yields a fascinating split verdict. It scores an 8 out of 10 for serious, affluent divers who demand a highly controlled, premium reef environment and do not flinch at paying thousands of dollars for isolation and a private airstrip.
And the other side.
It scores a 4 out of 10 for general, non-diving, luxury travelers.
Why such a low score for general luxury? If I am paying $1,000 a night, shouldn't it be incredible?
Because of what that $1,000 actually buys you. In the Maldives or Bora Bora, $1,000 a night buys you broad dining choices across multiple restaurants, high-end shopping, spa complexes, and easy resort hopping.
Oh, I see.
In Wakatobi, that money is buying logistics and access to the reef. The resort provides incredible diving and profound isolation, but it does not provide a bustling, varied luxury scene. If you don't dive, you might find the isolation stifling for the price.
And finally, the digital nomad.
A 4 out of 10.
Yep, saw that coming.
It is a brilliant location for a deliberate offline digital detox, but it is an absolutely terrible destination if your livelihood relies on co-working spaces or internet certainty.
So, to summarize the extensive findings of this travel audit, Wakatobi is brilliant, but it is deeply, structurally unforgiving. It rightfully belongs to the dedicated divers, the slow travelers with endless patience, and the premium guests who truly understand the immense real-world cost of engineering remoteness.
Remoteness is not a feature, it is a currency.
Wow, yes.
And in the Wakatobi Regency, you are forced to pay for that currency in one of two distinct ways. You either pay for it with a massive amount of capital to fly over the friction on a private plane, or you pay for it with a massive amount of time, patience, and physical resilience on the ground. There is absolutely no free lunch in a frontier environment.
Which leaves me with a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over, building on the trajectory we've discussed today. As luxury resorts continue to aggressively lock down the easiest access points in these remote locations by building private airstrips and monopolizing the prime reef real estate, and as those 2027 prices continue to surge, are we entering a new, highly stratified era of travel.
It's a huge question.
An era where the truly untouched parts of the globe will only be accessible to the ultra-wealthy. Will the independent traveler, relying on those $10 homestays and public ferries, eventually be priced out of logistical safety entirely, forced to take on ever-increasing physical risks and itinerary drag just to see a healthy coral reef before it disappears?
It is a sobering trajectory for the future of global exploration. The frontier is becoming privatized.
It really is. Make sure you keep exploring your own sources, always questioning the glossy brochures, and looking for the hidden friction in your own travel plans. If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
We will see you out there.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.